Lemon Juice Capital, investing in the future of legacy resorts.
Hi, welcome to TST Broadcasting and the Owners Channel. This is Shep Altshuler, president of Timesharing Today and the Timeshare Board Members Association. Today, in the first of a two-part series, we are being joined by timeshare owners Susan Collins, Jeff Bellin, Bryan Felber, and Fran Korwek. We will be discussing their perspectives about trends in timeshare vacation ownership. Hi, Susan, Jeff, Bryan, and Fran. Welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, Shep. It's nice to be talking to you again.
Hi, Jeff here. Hi, Shep. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And Bryan, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having us. It'll be interesting talking.
And same to you, Fran.
I think it's great to get together. It's been a while.
Well, you all have been part of the time-sharing community for some time, and you are, from my perspective, have been, very active and helpful contributors to the time-sharing community. So as timeshare owners, what do you consider your perspectives of the positive trends in the industry? And why don't we start with Susan? Maybe you could fill us in a little bit about what you see in that area.
Well, what I like is that a lot of timeshares are now looking for the first time at an exit strategy for owners who are no longer going to be using their timeshares. And I think that's something that it pretty much wasn't expected by the developers, that there would be a need for it, and I'm glad to see that they're doing it. And some of the other more versatile ways of trading is also a good thing. It doesn't work for everybody, but it has a lot of advantages to some people who know how to use it.
Are you referring specifically to points?
Well, there are points, yes. There's different ways of valuing the timeshares to say that your week can be traded for something more if you go for off-season. You can get longer time or trading to other resorts. That's important, but it's also the assignment of trading power that I see that RCI has become much more transparent about what value they're giving your week, which is very important for a sophisticated timeshare owner to know what is it that they own and how valuable is that time compared to other times. And I think that's something that's been sadly lacking. It's something that we specifically requested many years ago in the class action lawsuit where you and I met, Shep, and we wanted RCI to say what the trade power actually was. At the time, Interval International was giving ratings from 50 to 150, with 100 being the mean, saying what the weeks in a particular region were worth. Was it a very high demand? Was it slightly above average? Was it below average? Was it very much below average? And that's something that we didn't see with RCI, and we're seeing that now. Even with Trading Places, they've started to go into the red, white, blue rating, where certain weeks are worth more than others. And I think it's important to know, as a timeshare owner, what value your particular week is so that you can make an intelligent decision on whether or not to keep it, if you're going to add additional timeshares, whether or not to buy that particular week. And I don't want to get too long-winded here, but I see that as a very positive thing. I think it's a problem when Orlando says all time is red, and some weeks are a lot redder than others.
Right. Hey, Jeff, why don't you join in on that? What do you see as the positive trends in the industry?
Well, Susan really stole my thunder. I mean, I can't agree more. That really is to me, the main positive trend. Now, here's the thing. I started back in 2001 getting my first timeshare. That was in RCI points. So I've had that advantage of knowing what a particular timeshare is worth, and what season and area. I mean, mean, it's assigned a fixed set of points. So I know right off the bat, how it compares to, say, what I own when I'm trading. But in the weeks program, that hasn't been the case. And I think the transparency that even the weeks program has undergone, where it's a different set of points than the points program, that's confusing. But the fact is that there is at least a points value being assessed to a timeshare, so that people get an idea of what their timeshare is worth in the trading world. That is certainly positive. I'll say something else. Are all of the alternative trading companies that have arisen, trading places and dollar and exchange and whatnot. It doesn't always work for me, but given they tend to be better for somewhat lower valued timeshares, in that they do just a one for one exchange mostly. My Hawaii exchange, my Hawaii timeshare, which is where I do most of my trading from or with, is worth so much in the RCI point system that merely trading one for one in a dial exchange system doesn't get me the value that I do when I'm trading points within RCI. So I don't do that. But for many people, it's become, with RCI's trading fees getting higher and higher. For some, it's actually these the added number of trading companies has created some competition and a lower cost option for trading.
How about you, Brian? Any comments on other trends that you might see?
My primary thing would be going with Susan on the exit strategies. I think most of my kids are interested in taking mine when I'm not ready to use them anymore, but in the event that changes, when I'm ready to get rid of them, it's good to know that a lot of these companies are developing exit strategies. So that would be the most positive thing that I would see.
Okay, very good. And Fran, any insights on the positive trends?
Pretty much Susan and Brian and Jeff have hit them all. I think there are some clubs out there that are starting to identify the next generation that we heard about in Orlando last May. I actually attended I can't believe I did it, but I attended a presentation yesterday, and it was like somebody from that resort must have been sitting in the audience, because they addressed most of the issues about how the millennials travel and what their travel plans are and their lack of a commitment to a week at a fixed time. So it was interesting that at least one club seems to have hit that, and I mean there's two exit strategies. One is that you give it back to the resort or somehow dispose of it, and the other is that your kids actually be interested in being in a timeshare environment and paying the maintenance fees. I mean, my kids they're certainly interested as long as I pay the fees, but that there's some product out there that will fit their needs, short stay vacations, spur of the moment type vacations, and I think that plus just the general recognition. I think since we started the push to a reasonable exit strategy, I think a significant number of resorts are in a 1-year maintenance fee to 2-year maintenance fee, and you walk, which as a board member certainly simplifies the process of not having to foreclose on people. But I think, from both the consumer standpoint and the management standpoint, an exit strategy is very important.
Now let's do the flip side and take a quick look at what might be considered the negative trends in the industry. So Fran, I'll go back to you. What do you see as the direction, negative trends that might be occurring that we still have to look at, from the industry perspective?
Well, it's not a trend. It's the same old, same old. I just said I attended a presentation yesterday, and, I know what I'm doing. My wife sits there. She doesn't care. She says, I know what I'm doing, so just deal with it. But I watched a lot of really, really old people. I'm 66, so I'm talking like really, really old. Sit there and get sucked in by it and pull out the checkbook. And, at Hastry, I'm trying to help a lady that lives in his residence place. And, this lady bought every time she got in front of a presentation, and now she's stuck with something. She can't afford it. And unfortunately, she can't even afford the give-back fee. So, I mean, you still have that sale to people that really shouldn't be owners. They have no clue what they're doing.
Brian, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, my biggest concern, and I guess there's the pro is, so my biggest concern is the points. Everything's going towards points these days. I agree that it may be good for some people in certain situations, and that it may offer some additional flexibilities. But my biggest concern with the points is the companies that I guess there's the fear that there's no guarantee that your points are going to continue to maintain the same value over time. That the number of points you need to acquire, to have a week somewhere, are going to inflate beyond what the points are. So I think there need to be some kind of guarantees or protections that, when you buy your points or when you convert to a points or buy your points program, that your points are always going to have a certain value, and that the value of the unit that you want to exchange those points for is always going to be the same. The other thing that is kind of bothersome is it seems like a lot of these companies, like Marriott, for example, they are really pushing the points programs onto their weeks owners, and trying to sell them to convert. And I haven't had them try lately, and I've heard that there might have been a little bit of a change in that. But I know at least initially they were charging a lot of money to convert to points, and it was like, well, I'm happy with my weeks. My weeks work for me, and we get what we want usually, and whatnot. So why would I want to pay a whole bunch of money when I'm happy with what I've got? So quit pressuring me to try to go onto the points program. I have heard recently, though, that they've either become more flexible or lenient in either waiving or even not charging the fees anymore, or reducing them at least. But I'm still not sold. I'm still happy with my weeks program. Maybe at some point I'll see some value in going to points, but I'm just not very trusting that they're going to continue to maintain the same value.
Good. And Jeff, why don't you give us your insights on the negative aspects?
Sure. Well, a few things. I'd like to comment first on what Brian said, if I might. The couple things. There was always, Brian, a weighting system, WEIGHTING, weighting system. So as Susan kind of alluded to, there are ones that are more red than others, there are ones that are more blue than others, etc. So it was kind of invisible because you didn't know whether your blue week was the same, what value your blue week was. So there always could be an inequitable weighting of your blue versus another blue. By having points on it, you get to actually see what your resort is worth and what that other resort is worth. And that other resort could go up if it goes from a silver crown to a gold crown. It is possible to do that, but at least that is out there for you to see. So I just want to mention that. And then, the negative, the converting to points means different things in different places. But in my, Kauai Beach Villas, the Wyndham has been trying to get people to convert to the Club Wyndham and to surrender their deed. You give them their deed plus a certain amount of money. When they approached me, they asked me for $7,000 plus my deed to get into Club Wyndham. But it set off an alarm with me because I knew that my deed is what guaranteed that I get into Kauai Beach Villas, and my deed was also a special premium oceanfront unit, building unit, and I give them my deed, I no longer have that guarantee either. So there is something potentially nefarious about those kinds of conversions that some companies are trying to do. So that's one thing. Now, other negative trends that haven't been mentioned yet, it's only a perception, I worry. I don't know what the facts are, so somebody else will back me up or whatever, set me straight. But it seems to be a rising average age of ownership. And maybe, Fran, you might have mentioned this, it's a question of what are millennials wanting? And are they going to want either a deeded fixed week or a deeded floating week or something where you are into a particular company or a particular timeshare, and is that what they're looking for? And if not, what happens to these timeshare resorts? Because the resorts require that everybody, that all of the owners pay their maintenance fees to keep the resort up. And if you get the shrinking number of owners, then you'll have more rising maintenance fees because each owner will have to pay more and more of those maintenance fees, or a higher percentage of them. And then one last thing is, and maybe I don't know if this has been the case for before I started, exchanging, but it seems to be sometimes harder to get into certain areas. I tried doing a search through RCI to get into either central Italy, Tuscany area, or northern Italy. For about 8 months, I did that search. I could not get a single opening from, and this was 2 years in advance, from spring into fall. Not a single opening. So I don't know if that's a trend or not, but it's something I just would want to put out there.
How about Susan? Would you want to jump in on this conversation on the negative trends?
Yes, I do. One thing that I learned and confirmed with my investment advisor is that millennials are not so much into buying houses. They're into retirement savings, but they're not. It's a generational thing where buying a house is not as big a deal. So I think that looking at that, buying a timeshare is also going to be a question. It's not that they don't vacation, but it's the commitment to real estate that they're not making. That's a different trend, and I think timeshares have to be more aware of it. But another trend that I haven't heard mentioned, and I think is very, very concerning, is that more and more timeshares are put up on websites for hotels, the hotel search websites. And that's just fine, except when the cost of renting is lower than the maintenance fee. And sometimes that happens. And it happens all too often. And I understand the concerns of the timeshare boards that say, listen, we've got some non-performing units. We've got to raise some money somehow. Let's throw them out there and see what the market will bring. But the problem with that is that if you've got people who have actually invested in this property and have to pay a certain amount and have to commit every year to the vacation and their maintenance fee, versus someone else who can walk in at a good time of year and pay less than a maintenance fee, to me, that is self-sabotage on the part of the timeshares. And if the argument is, well, that's all the market will bear, then my response to that is, then in that case, are you really viable as a timeshare? Maybe it's time to close up while there's still something there. And that's a very, very drastic approach, but it's something that I think should be looked at, because we can't have people continuing to be convinced that they're investing in a great idea and they're going to pay every year and make a commitment to this timeshare, whether they're exchanging it for something else, if someone else can walk in and pay less with no commitment. And I think that's something that timeshares need to be extremely cautious about.
Well, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to share your experiences and opinions with us today. I continued my interview with Susan, Jeff, Fran, and Brian, and we will be presenting that on a future TST broadcasting program. If any of our listeners would like to comment on this program, please send an email to staff@tsttoday.com, subject Owners Channel. So until next time, happy time sharing.